Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I'm looking forward to this class because this is a conversation I started having this morning with the council class. I want to talk a little bit about um, we have now Mars is retrograde, Pluto is retrograde, Venus is going retrograde. I'm not an astrologer, but I know that that's usually presents things from the past who are coming back toward us. I can tell you that the opportunities and the struggles that I've had for the past few months are all connected to things from my past that needs to be examined in deeper instances, particularly as it relates to my identity. And it's all related to the transit from 3D into 5D. And it will extend past the next 5 to 7 years. And there will be multiple iterations of the same thing, which is a movement toward a new identity, how you identify yourself. I've spoken to many of my friends, healers, clients, who are in the process, one version or another, either because they lost their job, or the job they're having now has a contraction of some kind, financial contraction, that they have to retrain themselves and recreate themselves into something else. I have a lot of people who are rebranding themselves into a new business that are entrepreneurs. I know lots of people who are going through this process, and people who already have money are still trying to define their purpose in this emerging world that we're moving through, this emerging landscape that we're moving through. But every time you think you arrive at something, it morphs and changes into something else. And that change in identity is not easy. As a matter of fact, I would say for some, it's the most painful thing in the world. I had spoken in the past week to 3 people who are suicidal because of this. Because whatever status quo that they existed in, because it's no longer there, it's crumbling, that old paradigm is collapsing, and they have no way to connect to what's happening in the world and to understand. And therefore, they feel in such a deep and psychological way that they don't belong here. They don't belong in this world. And therefore, suicide ideation. If that is you, call the suicide hotline, ask for help. There's support, there's help out there. I had a conversation recently with somebody that was crying and telling me their woes and their problem. And what is the first thing I said to him? You're not alone. Because what he was describing is the process that I've been going through for now 5 years. And I'm telling you, it's not for the meek. It's not for the feeble. You have to be very strong in your core, because the doubts and the fears that it creates inside of you are so fundamental that you begin to think that you don't understand, because everything that was foundational about this, your world, is being shaken down. Now, when it relates to our earning and our capacity to earn and money, one can easily understand that the fear of the grief and the fear of loss, and how that can cause you to try to figure out a different way to make money so that you can continue to maintain what you have. Not even thrive, just to maintain what you have. And so that's the part, that's one aspect of this. And it's a big aspect, because this idea of lack is the thing that's driving the 3D world, or the fear of not having. Whether it's money, whether it's shelter, whether it's adoration, whether it is sex, whether it is power, it's the fear of not having. Okay? And thus, that in itself can become a way to shake down your identity. But if you have everything and you're completely satisfied in everything that you have, another way in which your test can become, because in order for you to ascend and to leave the 3D world and move into 5D and beyond, you have to let go of the current identity you have in 3D. And it has to die. So the resistance that you're perceiving is serving a purpose. But to some people, particularly some of, unfortunately, who have committed suicide, it's because they, unfortunately, they didn't have the support nor the understanding to know that this too shall pass. So I had a conversation yesterday with another friend and client. Again, he was not suicidal at the moment, but he had been in the past, and he was asking me, what is it that makes people think about suicide? And he was very intelligent, very bright, very knowledgeable about, because he had been in therapy for years and lots of stuff. And I had to sit down and have a real conversation with him. Now, this is not the kind of class I want to do today, because I'm opening the umbrella even bigger. Although this is a very important topic, maybe at some little point we can do a class on that. But I'm going to open the umbrella much broader to talk about, in a lot of instances, the test or what needs to die is directly connected to the emotional, psychological, mental relationships we have with people on the outside. A lot of times, it is actually those relationships that defines us. And in some instances, if you have a relationship right now that seems to be with your boss, with a family member, with a friend, with a lover in your life that seem to be a sore point, meaning they irk you and irritate you in the worst way, and they seem to be behaving in a manner that cause you major pain and ache, and you can seem to walk away from them. Okay, you know that they're uncomfortable, they're causing you pain, they're creating chaos in your life, and you cannot seem to resolve it. And in these instances, you have to understand that the outside is within. The way out is within. The outside is a mirror. I've said this to you many times before, but I want to really get into this and describe exactly the process, because it has served me in the past 2 weeks to a degree. Even today after the morning class, I went for my meditation on the waterfront. I got even more insight, deeper, deep stuff. And this is an adult conversation. If you're someone who's not willing to do the real work and you're, fluff, what I call bubble gum spirituality, this is not a conversation for you. If you really want to go in and understand how to do the real work, I'm going to talk to you honestly and directly, and I'm going to demonstrate to you through my own experience how to do it. So you may have 1 or 2 people or more in your life right now, if you're very lucky, that are irking you and troubling. And you can have both. You could have the financial stuff and also a person or several people. And they're irking you and causing you to ask yourself, why am I repeating this? Why is this person in my life? Why this? Why? And I'm going to describe this by using the life story of Lady Kuan Yin. Her name means she who hears the sufferings of the world. But that wasn't what, she was not born a bodhisattva. She was simply born as a princess to the emperor of China. She had 2 other sisters, no sons. And the emperor wanted to marry her well to seal his alliance with other noble families and marry them to general and important people. She was not interested. She wanted to be a nun. The other 2 sisters marry well, not her. She insisted she will not marry anyone, and the father was livid. He was livid because he's the emperor, and everybody should obey him. And he then took her and put her as a domestic in the kitchen, in the imperial court. And they mistreated her in all kinds of ways, so that the hope for in his mind was to discourage her. If she suffered enough, she will be discouraged, and she will, because she had she was an imperial princess with all these servants serving her. Now she's being the servant. She will eventually relent and say, I want my privilege back. But she would not do this. When this was not enough, the father said, okay, I know a nunnery, I'm going to send you there. I know the Mother Superior. I'm going to ask them to abuse you. And they did. They abused her in all kinds of ways. They did some horrible, torturous thing to her in the nunnery. Okay? Depriving her of food, depriving, not giving her proper shelter, let her freeze, and et cetera, et cetera. She suffered. And she knew it was her father that was commanding for this to happen to her. She kept with a spiritual practice, and she kept doing what she needed to do, because she had an internal calling to continue on a path toward enlightenment. And at some point, when the father years later found out that she was still doing this, he felt ashamed of her, and sent assassin to kill her. At that point, she had elevated so much that the energy of enlightenment, or the beginning of enlightenment, cloaked her, and she was transported to what is called Fragrant Island. She was the only person on the island. And as she was praying there and in meditation, she began to try to heal the PTSD, the trauma that she was subjected to by her dad. She began to go deep inside of herself to find and to listen to her own inner brokenness and vulnerability, to find out why, if there was, not so much why, but if there was any lesson that the pain that she suffered from the end of her father, from her father, was there any lesson that she was supposed to learn? And she began to listen internally to the pain and the discomfort and the trauma that's inside of her. And as she listened and listened and listened, insight began, because she was there alone, began to pull through. And the insights were extraordinary. What she realized in all of this, that it was by the grace of God that she herself was not like her dad. That, as a matter of fact, the capacity to be as cruel and even more cruel than her dad existed in her. And I'm going to jump now for a second to tell you a little bit about my story. My whole family, including my mom, was severely emotionally and physically abused by my father. He was indiscriminate. If he started beating one of us, all of us were going to get beat up. I remember every time we heard his car coming from the street, pulling in the driveway, all of us were in fear and trembling and walking on eggshell. My mother would say, stay quiet, don't say anything, don't respond, and you don't know what's going to set him off. It was completely irrational. And he was screaming from the top of his head, and he would break things on us as children, okay? Like he would break it on us by beating us so bad. I also should tell you, to explain to you how terrible the trauma was. I watched one day my father break my mother's arm, drag her back into the house, and try to kill her. I was 4 years old when this happened, and it was a neighbor that jumped to a window that held my dad at gunpoint away from my mother. That's why my mother lived that day. I'm not trying to make myself into a martyr, but I want you to understand the kind of stuff the kind of violence that I grew up around. And so I was doing what Kuan Yin did. I went in trying to figure out and listen to where these things were lodged in me and the kind of pain that they created in me, the kind of, and I listen as if all the cell that's, let's say I was feeling it around my lower back, I would think that all the cells in that section of my body had ears. And is there anything that this part of my body wanted to share with me? And I sat with it for days. It wasn't one session, it was for days. Every time it felt a little bit better, there was a kind of like a release. It felt a little bit better, a little bit better. And one day I had the insight, Pierre, your dad was schizophrenic. He was undiagnosed. This was huge for me. And at the time, I knew this when I felt it, but it was true. Because I have mental illness all over in my family. And the insight that came into me, it is by the grace of God that you're not schizophrenic and you're not like your father. Because the predisposition exists in your bloodline. That blew my mind. Now, I met with my half sister, my dad remarried, I taught the kids, and I was talking to my half sister about the violence, and I was in Brooklyn with her. And I told her about this. She broke out into tears. And she said, that would explain everything, Pierre. That would she broke down. She was just wailing. And I kissed her, we said goodbye. I jumped in the train. By the time I got home, she had left several messages for me. I called her, I said, what's wrong? What happened? She said, Pierre, how did you know? I said, didn't know what? She said, I grilled my mother when I got home. You were right. My father was finally diagnosed 15 years ago. He's been taking antipsychotic medication now daily. How did you know? And at that point, something inside of me changed, because my dad was a monster to me, and a cruel and evil man, a monster. At that point, I began to realize something. If it was another disease other than a mental illness, if my dad was diabetic, if he had a health condition, and he was doing all crazy things related to that condition, I would have forgiven him for that. Why can I not forgive him for what he did, given the fact that he has a brain chemistry imbalance? I felt sorry for him. And I have to tell you, before I even got to feeling sorry for him, I went deep inside of myself and realized that the capacity for this exists in my bloodline. I have to forgive myself for having the potential to become more cuckoo than him and more crazy than him. I have to forgive myself, forgive myself for having that kind of weakness in me. This is what Kuan Yin did. When she was in Forbidden Island and she realized that everything that her dad did, she's capable of doing the same thing. She had to ask herself for forgiveness. She had to forgive herself for the capacity to even manifest this. And when she did this, from that point, healing began to pour into the location where the trauma and the PTSD was cellularly lodging in her body. She began to feel relief. She began to feel healing. She began to feel repair. And what follows after that is that you have compassion and acceptance for whomever you thought was the monster in your life. The outside is a mirror pointing at you. Whomever is in your life right now, I can guarantee you this. That's the biggest source of discomfort, pain, and suffering in your life. If you go and follow that path, which is the Heart Sutra of Kuan Yin, which is to go internal and realize that everything is within, and you sit silently to listen to yourself, you will discover that some aspect of that external bullying exists in you. And it will cause you to ask yourself for forgiveness for being human, for being imperfect, for being broken. And then beyond that point will come the acceptance, the compassion. And it will be a true acceptance and true compassion, not something that's lip service, that's kind of like a cover up, like a happy face on something that's putrid. It will be a real compassion. And I have to tell you, my father had a stroke before he died. And for the last 3 years before he died, I would go to the house. I couldn't be in the same room with this man. I was so, and as a matter of fact, our part of the family, because my parents had divorced, I didn't see my sibling for 15 years because of him, because my dad was living with them. I didn't want to see my half-brother and my half-sister because I didn't want to be next to this man. He did too many things that were so horrible and, to my mind, unforgivable. Yet, because I was able to do this, when I would go visit him, which was often, whether he was in the hospital or at home, I would shave him. I would take care of it. I didn't, everything that I was holding. And in fact, I can tell you this, that the day that I began to realize this and say, not only am I forgiving myself, but I'm now going to have compassion for him because it's a mental issue. Now it's confirmed. It was first a feeling that came from within me. Now it's confirmed, it's a mental issue. And because of that compassion and that release, I was able to sit next to him, to talk to him. Even now, my father passed away. My half-brother, I told my half-brother this journey, and I was trying to guide him into something similar. He just looked at me and said, Pierre, you're just a better person than I am, because I hate him. For what he did to us, I can't stand him. I'm glad that I was able to arrive that, but I couldn't help him. I don't know if he's in a different place now, but my half-brother's in a different place now. But I can tell you, at the time when I had the conversation with him, he didn't want to hear it. This is what I mean when I say it's adult stuff. It's to realize that whomever in the outside is your biggest thorn. It is an arrow that's pointing internally at you. Some part of this, of that behavior, of what's being done to you as the victim, exist in you. You have the capacity to not only do this, but to do more, to do much worse. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, do you think that if your father hadn't had that mental illness and he was just mean, he would have had the same ability to heal?
I probably would have, again, when you go into that space of going internal, you don't know what you're going to discover. In my instance, I discovered the mental illness. In some of the instances, maybe the person is just corrupt or evil or love money, okay? Whichever the case may be, you can begin to forgive yourself because that part exists in you as well. And the moment the self-forgiveness happens, it opens a doorway to all kinds of magic to occur.
So then whatever is outside of you exists in you at any degree of evil or corruption.
Absolutely. Now the story continues that at that moment, Kuan Yin was not only able to hear herself and to heal herself, but she began to hear the suffering of everyone else on the planet. Because she so attentively listened to herself that transferred into her able to hear everyone else. Now the story continues that to finish that Kuan Yin narrative, the emperor became very ill, and the imperial doctor could not cure him. A wandering monk happened to be by chance at the imperial palace, and he went in and spoke with the emperor and said to the emperor, "You're dying, but the only cure that I know is can be prepared only if a bodhisattva gives you one eye and one arm." And he said, "Well, no one is going to be willing to do that for me. And I might as well prepare myself for death." And the guy said, "Well, I don't know. There's a bodhisattva reputedly on the Fragrance Island. I will go there and make an inquiry." And when he went there, he returned back months later with the eye and the arm, and he was able to create a cure for the father, who immediately got better. The father bowed down and immediately began to pray to him and tell him that you're a great healer. He said, "I did no such thing. I just prepared the medicine. The person you should thank is the person who did the sacrifice. You should go to that island and give that praise and that gratitude to this person." And he went in there thinking that it was a male, actually. And when he arrived, he found Kuan Yin blind in one eye and missing one arm. And he fell down and broke into pieces, begging her to forgive her. And she already had. She knew when this priest came in that this that she was giving was for her father. And at that moment, the story goes that Gautama Buddha, the first Buddha, came to her. And because of the loss of her arm, gifted her with 1,000 hand, 1,008 hand, which is the ability for her to respond to 1,008 requests from the world, because he knew that she had the gift of listening. She could hear the pain everywhere. But she had also now the ability, because of her going so deep and having such compassion, and realize that whatever the way Kuan Yin healed with the Heart Sutra, let me explain it to you. When she hears your pain, she goes into her heart and she realizes that that pain exists in her too. And she's capable of the same mistakes. And she forgives herself. She repeats this exact same thing. And then she's able to radiate from her heart her true compassion and true mercy. And it's from that point that she's able to heal. She's an extraordinary being. Very few people can do what she does. And not only that, but with her eyes, the Buddha gave her 3 heads. Restored eyes and gave her 3 heads, and she was able to look in multiple places at the same time. Because she made a vow now to remain behind until, and not go fully into enlightenment until all the rest of humanity has moved in, because she's now connected to the pain and the suffering of everyone on earth. And she's trying to guide each one of us out of suffering by accountability, by taking responsibility, and by acknowledging deep within ourselves that, and to the degree that something is irking you and making your life miserable, guarantee you, somehow the reason it's really bothering you is because it's connected to you internally somewhere. Now, of course, with Kuan Yin and with me and my dad, there is also the epigenetic stuff. There's past life, there's epigenetic stuff. I covered that in other classes. I'm not going to get into too greater details about this because there are more profound insight that I need to bring to your attention related to very much this. In the universe, particularly related to money and exchange, and we talked about the loss of identity as it relates to our capacity to earn a living or having an identity. There are two desires that have created everything: a desire to give and a desire to receive. And it's the dynamic between those two desires that has created everything, two polarities. In the beginning, there existed only an endless desire to give. But that desire to give by itself was not self-aware. Because in order for you to be self-aware, there has to be a mirror or an outside for you to reflect you. So it manifested an endless desire to receive. And for a while, the giver and the receiver were in a perfect alchemical marriage until something unprecedented happened over a period. The receiver wanted to give back to the giver. It began to evolve what the Kabbalists call bridal shame, feeling undeserving of receiving gifts endlessly. I'm going to share something with you that's very personal, which is this afternoon's breakthrough for me. I have a situation in my life right now, particularly for those of us who are all healers. We find we find that, for example, in a family, typically there is one person that's always the giver or the fixer. And everybody comes to you to ask you to fix things for them. I am that person to a lot of people. I'm the fixer. I'm the person everybody asks for periodic requests, and I'm always giving and giving and giving and giving. The insight I had when I went to an afternoon morning class around 12 o'clock on the waterfront. I went to an iteration of this again. I'm going even deeper than I did before, listening. What I didn't realize is that and it's related to my dad again. When my dad began to abuse me when I was a kid, I remember when I said this, it was after he tried to kill my mother. I remember when I was younger, at that age, I said to myself, I will never depend on anyone again. I will become self-sufficient. I didn't know what self-sufficient was. But I remember at 4 years old, I said this to myself, because I will not depend on him to give me anything. And so one of the way internally I switched something inside of me at that point because of the trauma is that I begin to give compulsively. Because if I give, I'm in control. I completely try to amputate my need to receive. And if you cannot receive the universe, if you do this, the universe will not be able to give you any gift, any fortune, any money, and you're going to keep giving from you as a human being and not allow the universe to flow through you. I didn't realize I was doing this. And in my relationship with people, I initiate the relationship by being the giver, because that's my passive aggressive way of controlling, so that I don't feel that I'm in need and I have to request and ask for you to help me with this, that, or the other, and I need to receive X, Y, Z, and etc. Because because that part makes me feel weak and vulnerable. And therefore, I'm going to disconnect to it. I didn't realize I did this until this afternoon. And it's so deep that I have attracted in my life my opposite. I have attracted in my life people who are like an incarnation of an endless desire to receive, while I'm the endless desire to give. It's like a projection, an external projection of your opposite. And what I realized this afternoon is that I have to pull the projection back inside of me. Because when I did this, when I pulled it back in and I'm able to equally give and receive, that's the balance which exists. And everything around me, my identity, my financial flow, my health, everything will rebalance. I want you, you don't have to, this is a rhetorical question, but I want you to think for a moment about your own life. Particularly for those of us who are in the Light community, we are typically givers. Who in your life right now is the external expression, your opposite, which is somebody in your life that may be asking and demanding from you all the time? Who is this person? And whatever that person is actually to help, trying to, as horrible, as draining, as expensive that relationship may be, that person is trying to help you heal by pointing out to you that you are the one that rejected that desire to receive. You did this yourself. It's trying to point you, to tell you, internalize me. Don't externalize me. Any questions, any comments? I know what I'm talking about is very deep, and I'm asking you for accountability, okay? And to the degree that you can, because the whole point, the other part of the desire to receive dynamic and desire to give and desire to receive a dynamic I didn't say is that the reason the whole universe was created was because that imbalance, when the desire to receive decided I have to give something back, it said for the first time to the giver, change the dynamic, was saying to the giver, no more gift, I don't want anything from you. And at that point, it contracted, it collapsed, it was infinite, it collapsed into a point that was no bigger than the tip of my finger. And it got scared and then said to the giver, come back, I made a mistake, restore everything the way it was. And the giver said, yes, I could restore everything the way it was, but I will never be able to remove your shame. And therefore, it came back to the giver, to the receiver, and shattered it in a gigantic spiritual detonation, creating in an instant the universe, space, time, and everything else that we exist in. You and I are fragments and aspect of this receiver and giver together. So we have to learn to give and receive from each other, so that if you're in a relationship with somebody, you need to give to them, and they have to learn, and you have also have to learn how to become receptive so that you can receive from them, and vice versa. And it's not just a sexual thing, it's in all things. It's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual. You have to, this is the whole point. And through the process of doing this, over eons, the shame and the undeservedness will be removed. And all of a sudden, we will feel deserving of the gift that the original giver. So in other words, we're put in a dream or an illusion to experience these things over and over again. And when we feel deserving, enlightenment occur, we are back again with the in the original state. What I didn't realize I'd been doing for years now, because of that experience when I was 4 years old, I had cut off my ability to receive. I had blocked it. And at this moment in my life, because that blockage is making, it's like a spinning top that's degrading, that's wobbling sideways. I didn't realize, because of the purge and everything, as a cleansing that's occurring now, this has become a crisis for me. I have to correct this ASAP. I have to correct this. Any questions, any comments?
Well, Pierre, you've really given us so much to think about, and I'm still unpacking it. But one of the thoughts that I wondered about, if we realize who we are and we feel ourselves part of the infinite, whatever we'll kind of call it, the infinite expanse of creation or whatever, in that state, there is a natural state of infinite possibilities of providing everything that you could possibly want. In that state, even if we were to be able to consistently maintain that, would we still block the receiving for our own whatever pride or need to control? And I certainly am guilty as much as anybody about being a control person, and to release that control is a courageous step. But I'm wondering if just moving into that state of oneness is enough.
Before you can get in that state of oneness, you have to pass through this.
Oh, so yeah.
You can't bypass it.
Oh no, okay.
You can't bypass it. You can't cheat. You have to move through this. I'm going to be more candid with you guys, okay? So as I was doing this meditation, for almost an hour and a half on the waterfront today, I realized growing up deeply Catholic and wanting to be a priest, and the church did not help me, or at least I warped certain ideas to fit the kind of like childhood narrative that I was having, and the trauma that I had experienced, which was, for me, to receive is not virtuous.
Mm-hmm.
It's not of God. To be in need and to keep asking is not virtuous. And since I wanted to be holy and virtuous, I will not ask. I don't need. That was a big one for me. I'm not there yet, okay? I'm not saying just by that experience, all of a sudden, everything is restored and Pierre is on. I'm not there yet. I'm just giving you literally something that happened a few hours ago. But I realize now, it's so clear to me what I had done. That I blocked that access, and what compounded it for me is the fact that I want to be virtuous, I want to be holy. And therefore I'm seeing, and now I have to reframe my thinking and realize that the receiving is as necessary as the giving. And it must cohabit. It has to be healthy balance in me. It must cohabit in my being. Because the longer I push it aside, the more I will have people on the outside that will suck the life out of me, emotionally, financially, in all different ways. Because I am the one that's pushing it out from me. When I have it within me, I can attract in my life the money, the flow, the abundance, and everything else that I need. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. Also think about feeling the need to earn it. If you are receiving something, you cannot receive it just because of whatever graciousness, grace that you're in, but you can't receive unless you've done something to deserve it, to earn it.
Yes. And in a lot of cases, God is giving it to us by grace. And we are unable to accept that grace. And we push it away. And the reason why God is giving us by grace is because we made so much sacrifice in past life and we've done so many things that were right. In other words, God will not give you something unless you don't deserve it. And if God is giving it to you, it's because you deserve it. It's like withdraw and deposit in the bank. The bank will not give you money unless you've earned it and you deposit it at some point. So if God is giving you a grace of several $1 million, it's because in the past life or somehow, or because of an act of altruism, an act of love or something that you did, God is saying, this is your reward.
Well, Pierre, some things that a lot comes to mind, but it's like each of us have our own individual path to here in the physical body. But we are all connected to each other in very in intimate ways that we don't really understand or realize most of the time. I don't know, several things come to mind. Well, more than several. I remember when I was taking a leadership class and the instructor said, if you feel you're not being heard, what your job is to do is to listen. Because there is something there that's connected to you feeling not heard. That in that relationship or interchange that is asking you to go deeper into what is missing when you're feeling unheard. And is it with the other person or does it start inside of you? And yeah, all of this is just, I relate deeply to it. And, I each day, I intentionally, my intention is to intentionally pay attention to those things, instances, people's behaviors, or anything that tend to jar me because I know it's reaching deep inside of me and touching something there. And in the universe, nothing is a throwaway. So that has meaning. And, so I am constantly asking for, this deeper insight to really understand or listen in a way that helps to guide me through whatever that is, in whatever way that I need to, if that makes sense. I don't know.
That's a beautiful thing that your instructor brought you to that point, because you are totally right. That instructor is very wise, because that's exactly it. That the outside is a mirror, that reflects something back in you. And the moment it irks you and it causes you problem, it's trying to tell you something internal. I have people in my life right now that I consider to be, I have never thought I would be around this individual because they have the most desire to receive for self and self alone. But I created them. I can say that today. Whereas before I would say, oh my God, I don't know how these people are in my life, blah, blah, blah. I created them because it's a projection of my opposite, of what I cut off from myself. Because I'm too ashamed to receive.
But Pierre, when you say you created them, could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, because when that experience happened with my dad, where I decided I'm not gonna, I don't want to be, I don't want to depend on anybody. I need to be self-sufficient. And the way I internalize this is that if I keep giving, I'm in charge. So I completely disconnected myself to asking, requesting, demanding. I disconnected myself to this. And the more you disconnect, the more what you suppress and push and bury, if it doesn't find an internal way to express itself, it will show up in your life. So if I am the embodiment of giving, and I'm giving all the time, and I don't know how to receive, I will manifest my opposite externally. In the real world, I will meet people who are the embodiment, because it's if I'm -5, I will attract +5. If you think of it as polarity.
I see.
So it's not that I created them, like I manifested them, blah, 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 etc. It's a question of just polarities, just energy. And what I need to do now is to internalize when I look at them and look at the way they are expressing themselves and the way they are required. And I'm like, my God, these people have such a desire to receive. I have to realize that desire to receive exists in me. I'm pushing it back. I'm suppressing it. I have the same desire to receive inside of me that I'm suffocating. If I allow it expression, maybe the universe will begin to give me what I deserve. That's why I'm wobbling around in lack. The universe will finally be able to say to me, because in order for you to receive from the universe, you have to have a vessel that's willing to accept. I need to have this. I rarely have this in my life because I'm busy giving to everyone else.
Well, I can really relate to all of that in terms of the energetic flow and all of that. And I remember years ago, and I've been doing some, I constantly do, but lately I have been, I guess, opening up in different ways or deeper ways. And I remember a long time ago, and I mean, I was just thinking back over my life, people would just offer me things or offer me positions or offer me, and I know a lot of times I would say no to that. And now I'm real, and somebody said something to me years ago, and they said, well, you're not doing that because you're afraid. And that hit me a certain way, but I still kind of shrugged it off. But then when I'm today looking back at much of that, it probably, I was afraid. But now I can admit that and I see that. At that point, though, I didn't want to hear it, I guess. And I heard it, but I didn't hear it. and I just turn different things down. No, I don't think I want to do that. There was always an excuse.
Yeah. Girl, you're speaking my language. The amount of time, even compliments, I would change the subject immediately.
Yep. Yeah.
I would immediately change the topic. Well, blah, 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 and I would turn the conversation on somebody else.
Mm.
And also when people would invite me, and again, free this, blah, blah, why don't you go? I would always find an excuse. I'm busy, I'm I can't make it up night, I'm busy, I'm not busy. This is the truth. I just cannot receive because I was trying to divorce and amputate that part of me. Because again, for two reasons. One is that first reason I stated, but the second one is that I thought that part of me was needy and it was not virtuous. That part came right before I got off that bench in the park today. That it was not virtuous. And again, what did I do? I went back to that place where I felt all of this and I listened. And this is what came through.
So now what do you do with that?
I will continue to listen. And I'm asking the universe and God to actually help me reintegrate my desire to receive back into myself. I'm thinking of all the people in my life that have the capacity to constantly ask and ask and ask, and they seem to have no shame. I am saying to myself, that part exists in me. I want some of that energy to return back inside of me, so that I can begin to be more balanced, and that the universe can begin to gift me what I deserve. I've been asking the universe for certain things, particularly for to create Guyville, to fulfillment of my purpose and all of that. And okay, there's something that's not right. Okay, I have spent thousands and thousands of dollars doing marketing work, advertising, to try to project the work to a greater community. It has never happened. I wasted money upon money upon money. Even on the Facebook, not Facebook, but in the YouTube channel, I should have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but that's not what's happening. The value that I'm giving to the world should attract it. Why? Because that part of me, that's the vessel that needs to be created to say, I desire and I need this, I am cut off from it. If I say I need, I deserve, I may say temporarily, mentally, intellectually, but there is a deep subconscious program that's saying the exact opposite. That's the saboteur. That's saying the exact opposite. So I may connect temporarily, but that saboteur then takes over because it has become now a law. I did this since I was 4 years old. So I have to ask God for help, because something that all has its own identity now. It has its own, it's like a splinter psyche. I have to ask God for help to help me recalibrate my entire psyche, because my purpose this lifetime will be another lifetime where I was not able to accomplish what I came down to do. I've had a few of those. And I don't want this lifetime to be one of those. I remember telling you that I met somebody years ago that I thought was an alien, because when it was about money, he would say, money is easy. And I couldn't believe it. Any money that he needed, he created it sometime in 2 weeks. It's just like this. And I'm talking hundreds of thousands, $500,000. I just couldn't understand how he would get $500,000 in no time like this. Why? Because his desire to receive was so tuned and so connected to him. Mine, I've completely cut it off. I alienated. I was trying to, it's not connected to me. Or if it is, it's some through multiple back doors. It's in the basement. It's, you know.
I suppose you're going to say that we have to identify the saboteur before we can ask God to help us restore or reintegrate the ability to receive. So that will have to be, again, the first step. Identify why.
I know why for me. I know why.
Oh, I didn't mean for you personally.
But yeah, exactly. And again, it's in the listening that you will know why. It's when you go within. I know what happened to me. I know the trauma. I know exactly when it happened. I remember the thought, and I didn't even know what self-sufficient meant. But I had a feeling that I'm not gonna need people like him ever again. I'm not gonna be dependent.
I understand, and
Yeah.
but that is the important step before universe or God to help you.
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Because you need to. It's like a doctor. You have to have a diagnosis. You need to know what had happened.
Pierre.
Yes.
After this morning's class, I was reflecting back on my early childhood, and at 5 years old, maybe, 5 years old, I had the responsibility of actually taking care of all of my smaller siblings, and I had to make sure, they were okay, and I really had to get up early in the morning, make biscuits and all that before we go to school, all the responsibility. And I thought, oh my God. And I would always make sure they had everything. And in a way, I had this responsibility at a very early age. And I had not reflected on that. I said, well, why am I doing this? And then because the other part of it is the desire to give, I was reflecting on that. Why do I need to give? But then I reflected back to my childhood. I have in a way always done this and had this responsibility. I don't know, I'm rambling on, but
No, you're making perfect sense about it.
Okay. And so I'm now going inward, and when I went inward after the class, all of these thoughts came to me, and I said, well, what am I really trying to do? And I was trying to control the situation. I can remember these my siblings. They almost set the house on fire because they were playing with the stove and stuff like that. And I had the responsibility to try to put it into order and do whatever it was. So I was reflecting on that, and I said, my goodness, I really have to start going inward and looking at where all of this came from, and I'm trying to please and trying to really taking responsibility for stuff that sometimes it's not my responsibility. Well, I'm not going to say it's not my responsibility anymore, because I have to look at all of this and reflect on all of that, and then to with the universe to try to balance everything out. But anyway, I don't want to be rambling on, but but I was actually I went in tears because I was reflecting on all of that responsibility for a child from 4 or 5 years old, and I was like, oh my God, how, how I did this, I don't know, but and I'm the third child, and I had responsibility for how many of you guys were there?
Oh.
Nine children. My mother had 9 children. You didn't have that responsibility for all that. Okay. Okay, anyway, that's the thing.
Well,
Okay.
it was a perception, and what I can say to you, Bobby, what I can add to this is that you need to connect to your desire to receive. Out of that equation,
My desire to receive. Okay.
yes, out of that equation, where is your desire to receive? Where is your need to have somebody give to you?
Okay. Okay.
This is what's missing for me. I may talk about it intellectually. I may try to bypass it intellectually for a moment during a prayer and asking the universe, can you give me this? And God, a lot of times, has given me things, but I have a saboteur inside of me. And that saboteur is what I have to figure out a way to, the same way Chiron and after his wound, and as Zeus to heal them, Zeus elevated him into something else. I need to do the same thing with that receiver, with that desire to receive. I need to ask God to help me shift it into something else. Give it a new assignment and let it internally be reintegrated in me so that I can be more balanced.
Okay.
But it sounds like to me, Bobby, it sounds like that you accepted the assignment that you were given for whatever reason to be the giver for younger siblings. And you took on a kind of a persona, maybe a split psyche even, that was who you were.
Yeah.
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 She's always dealt with, I don't know. It's like, it was the responsibility. If somebody said something, you had to just do every little thing. And it's like, girl, you don't have to do that. But, it's like, what? Oh, no, she said, do. Okay. I said, you go do it your way. But this conversation is reminding me of, recently I went to a week-long storytelling. And one of the things that the story guide was asking us to do was to think about, he said, think about because he wanted you to come up with a story around it. Think about a situation or time in your life when you made a decision, or if you didn't make a decision was made for you, but you did some action. And when I mean action, I mean in its broadest sense, that took you through what I'm going to call a portal, and that's very loosely used to, but it's like when you at a situation where you cannot make the decision not to go back, where you are now, the only thing you can do is to decide how you're going to deal with it. How you're going to go forward, or how you're just going to sit down and do nothing, or while you're just going to, you can't make you passed the threshold of reversing what you've done. And in that you passed that threshold, what was that situation? And how do you talk about that threshold? And then because of that, what is your new story? And it was very, very insightful
Mm.
because it's about continuing the story and coming up with our new story
Mhm.
to move forward, but understanding what has generated, what are the sources of those new stories
Mhm.
or stories? Just what's the source? So he had us to go back and remember the first time when, the first time, and through that it just, it was a thread, because when you pull that thread, there are a lot more threads there that need to be pulled,
Mhm.
so you just have to keep pulling them to fuller understand, the story. And it's really our reflections about the story, because, I was thinking about that when Bobby was saying she had to take care of everybody, but that's her story about it. That's her reflection about it.
Mhm.
And that's what's real for her,
Yep. And
Yeah.
to add to what you're saying, Esther, for Bobby, when you're that young and you take that kind of responsibility, you don't have a childhood. You grow up too quickly, okay? And therefore your inner child got damaged.
Yeah.
To receive is to allow yourself to be vulnerable and to say to the universe, to God, to someone else, I need your help.
Mhm.
To be able to do this and to really feel that you're deserving of that help, fundamentally, internally, at a cellular level, is as important to manifest and create as it is to ask and request the help from the universe. Because if you cannot feel you're deserving of this, and again, as I said, I'm not saying that I've never manifested before. I have. God has been very good to me, but I know right now that we have been much further had it not been for that part that the universe is pointing out to me right now. And it's telling me, you need to correct this, Pierre. You need to address this. So the pain, the discomfort, the part of you that's wobbling, like the spinning top that's going sideways, that's about to unravel, whatever it is, it's an opportunity for you to go deeper and to heal. And I know when I heal this, nothing will be able to stop me.
Mhm.
Absolutely nothing.
Right. Okay.
In your analysis, Bobby, in your examination, in your meditation, in your listening, you need to ask yourself, first of all, who's the greatest pain in your butt right now? I know who I'm not, the one whose name shall not be mentioned. So,
Right.
like the Harry Potter. But there is an aspect of that, it's a projection of an internal part of you that you are not looking at.
Yeah.
And to the degree that you can go within yourself and forgive yourself for even having that part of you existing, because you're imperfect, you're human, and you're flawed, and all of us are broken in ways that we cannot even imagine. And the moment you can acknowledge in this and you begin to really forgive yourself first for having that part existing inside of you, then the healing begins.
Right.
The healing begins.
Very
And
good.
then from there will be compassion. And the moment the healing begins within, the external challenges begin to change. The dynamics begin to flow very differently.
Mhm. Yeah.
The reason the external dynamic becomes toxic, it's because we're not healing the stuff inside of us we're supposed to heal.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Look, I know this is adult conversation. I know that only a fraction, maybe 10% of the population will do this kind of deep work, but it's necessary work. A lot of people who are in crisis, like the individuals I told you who I had spoken to, that were telling me that they had suicidal ideation, or some of them were currently going to deep depressions and all that. This is the kind of work that they need to do. In addition to other suicide prevention stuff, again, if you're suicidal, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a suicide prevention specialist, but I have a heart. And in one instance, I know, well, in all these instances, I know that I was able to give them, at least temporarily, a lifeline. I cannot do the work for them, but I was able to give them a lifeline. All right, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll do a closing meditation on the back end. 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Let your mind and your heart sync with each other. Let your entire awareness emanate from your heart space, and notice what you noticed. Realize that you can perceive 360 degrees. Notice what you noticed. Become aware of any external toxic and draining relationships that may exist in your life right now. in your physical body is dislodged. Where in your cellular structure are you feeling this connection? Take a very deep and slow breath. And listen. Listen as if all of the trillions of cells around the location where you're experiencing this discomfort had ears. Listen. For any information, insights, and knowing that this part of your body wants to share with you. What secrets does this hold for you? In what ways is the external and extreme behavior an unacknowledged internal part of you? Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Lord, open up my heart that I may accept my brokenness, my imperfections, my flaws, and my vulnerabilities. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Please forgive me. I love you, and I let go. Lady Kuan Yin, she who hears the suffering of the world, bless us with your divine mercy your true compassion, your healing and your repairs. Bring light, illumination, and from your flask that contains your immortal tears, let a drop reach that location in my body and transmute this deficit into an asset, into a portal through which enlightenment can come. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Pierre. Lots to unpack going forward, even.
I'm happy to hear that. If something else came up through for me as well, I had disassociated myself with my desire to receive. So, thank you. I want to thank all of you for listening to me tonight. If you're listening to us on Patreon, thank you for your patronage. On YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the channel, please, to increase the algorithm. And I will talk to you next week. Many blessings, everyone. Deep love.
Good night, everyone. Good night. You all.
Good night.